Okay, so we have about an hour of conversation with, excuse me, copywriting peer Doberman Dan, who I invited to join us. There's about 9 of you, I think, who get his newsletter now. He, like me, he is schizophrenic in the sense that he writes for clients and he's his own client and writes for himself. He's a little bit moodier about that than I am. So if you follow him, he has mood swings about his business when he decides never to have a client again and just to write for himself. And then after about 2 years of running businesses, he decides never to have a business and to write for clients. And so he sort of swings like a pendulum, where I'm sort of consistently unhappy with everything. But he's sort of from the Halbert school, and somewhat channels Gary even in the way he does his newsletter. I think you'll find him, where is he? Oh, there he is. I think you'll find him interesting and fun. And come on up, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll put you over there, right?
Do these recline?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can lay flat.
All right.
If that helps.
So Dan, I'm so glad to see that you scheduled this event to happen on the 3 days out of the year where you actually see the sun here in Cleveland.
Oh,
So
yeah.
thank
It's the weather's actually been
really nice.
shockingly good, isn't it? So you were a cop in Barberton.
I grew up in Barberton.
Okay.
And
So for those of you who don't know, Barberton, Ohio is half an hour from here. Gary Halbert lived in Barberton for a little while. He wound up having offices like everywhere. Halbert put his offices in bank buildings. So there was an office in Bath, Ohio, above the bank. There was an office in Barberton. And that's so the after-school employees could open the envelopes, take the money out, and the checks went right downstairs and got deposited in the bank underneath. It was an interesting system. So there's Gary Halbert roots in Barberton, and you grew up in Barberton. It's sort of a would you say, blue-collar, Akron, used to be rubber factory guys.
You're being very generous about that. Annette Bragg went to high school with me. Now, we did not know each other at the time.
Oh, really?
We had this Barberton discussion, and I think you're describing it very nicely, Dan. Let me.
I mean, well, you know, it has a disproportionate number of trailer parks per you know, which by the way, a mobile home is, you know, a bad dwelling on wheels, which gives its owner the illusion that they are going somewhere in life. That's what a mobile home is all about. So where were you a cop?
Dayton.
See,
I had to.
Well, that's a step up.
It was
South,
about
but
this.
It's a step up.
See, all the people in Barberton knew that I smoked way too much weed in high school, so the police department there never would have hired me. So, I had to
Barberton's one of only 2 places, by the way, in America I've ever been arrested. So,
are you kidding?
Oh, story for another time.
Is this?
But,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. I sort of lost my temper.
It's just out of character for you. I
Yeah.
have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, and I lined a car up across the street from the service department of a car dealership, put a brick on the gas pedal, and let it go. It turns out this is considered an inappropriate way to express your dissatisfaction. Look, a little did I know, right? I made the same claims Hillary's making about having your own email server in your basement. Well, nobody told me. You know, it's not like I didn't see a sign that said you can't do this. They took a dim view of it. Anyway, so here's the question. How long were you street cop?
12 years.
Any bullet wounds?
No, luckily, missed
So
those.
how has that informed either marketing strategies, approaches, or copywriting, if at all, but I'm assuming it has to have had some effect on what you now do.
Quite a bit. What I figured out really quickly was, so I was a kid. I just turned 21 when I was out on the street. 5'6". That hasn't changed in all these years. The weight has changed, but maybe a $140, even with all the equipment on. Little guy. And so I figured out real quick, I ain't gonna survive very long here in the inner city if I don't figure out how to get people to comply, because violence is rarely the answer in police work. It's the last resort. When it is the answer, it's the only answer. But most of the time, it's what you say, what comes out of your mouth. And I had to figure that out really quick for survival purposes. And graduating from Barberton High School, didn't equip me for that. I didn't study psychology or anything like that. So actually, prior to that, my gig selling vacuum cleaners saved my life more times than anything on the police department, than anything the police academy taught me.
So I missed that in the bio. And it is, if you don't know it, and I should have known it, one of the almost universal commonalities amongst top-tier copywriters, past and present, probably all the way back to 1950s to present, is that they have had, and now it's not going to be true going into the future because these opportunities are going away, but they have had experience in hardcore, nose-to-nose, toes-to-toes selling, often on the living room floor and kitchen table, before they became copywriters. And they have carried that with them. So you're a VAC guy. Little Maroon Pig or Electrolux? Or
I wasn't knocking on doors. I was
running appointments.
Factory rep for Eureka. So I was I was in retail places, but they had 12 different brands, and I had to steer them to the Eureka products. And pure commission, and I've developed these two bad habits I've been trying to break, but I have to support sleeping indoors and eating somewhat regularly. So if I didn't sell vacuum cleaners, I couldn't do either of those two things. So I figured that out really quickly out of pure desperation. Then that stuff is what saved my ass more times than not on the police department.
So is it true the worst thing for a cop is a domestic violence call?
Oh, yeah. Yes, for sure. Imagine sending some 21-year-old kid who's never been married to go, and he's supposed to referee this domestic problem amongst these two people in their 40s who've been married, and the guy wants to kill her, or vice versa. Now that I've been married 3 times now, I totally get it. But yeah, but back then,
there's a great Dr. Joyce Brothers line who you guys won't know, but so think Dr. Phil, but female, and like 4 decades ago. And Dr. Joyce Brothers' line was, in all the years we've been married, I never wanted to divorce my husband any one time. I wanted to kill him any number of times, but I didn't want to divorce him. So now, 12 years of cop experience, what migrates now out of that?
Well, all those, it was all, being a cop was, except for the few instances where force was necessary, it was all persuasion. It was all people skills and persuasion and understanding why people do some of the stupidest crap they do that makes no logical sense whatsoever. Figuring that out, why they do that, and then, you show up and you got to keep completely illogical people that are in what I call amygdala hijack. It is now pure lizard-brained thinking. There is no reasoning whatsoever. I've got, the gun to her head, and I'm going to kill. It's just pure amygdala-only thinking. And figuring out how the hell do I convince this person not to kill them or me? And it's all, it just comes all down to understanding human psychology, how to get people out of amygdala hijack, and how to persuade them to make the right decisions. And that's important to do that in your businesses, obviously. It's important to do it in your copy. When your life literally depends on it, you figure it out really damn fast. And those are lessons that stay with you for life. And that stuff, I really didn't realize until years later that was coming out in my copy. It was just in here. And it came out in my copy. It was years later that I realized, I remember this. I remember the day I learned this. I remember the family trouble I was on when I tried that technique, and it worked.
Origin. So when, where, why, and how did you become a copywriter?
Well, I never wanted to be a copywriter.
None of us did.
Because I'm, not a masochist.
It's one of the things somebody does who finds out they can't do much of anything else.
That's pretty much the story.
Here's what happens.
I didn't want to be a copywriter, period, freelance or anything. But what I wanted, because this crazy other Ohio guy sold me this thing called the magnetic marketing system, when I saw that, I had a major epiphany. Now, 12 years as a cop, 9 years part-time serial failure entrepreneur. At least 2 to 3 failed businesses a year for 9 straight years. Thank God I still had a day job.
This has something to do with the 3 wives.
We absolutely. Yeah. Well, definitely. By the way, I'm married to wife number 2 and number 3 at the same time. That's another thing we have in common. She's at the back of the room.
Yeah, not the same wife. We have the...
No, please.
We have the 2 and 3 in common. We don't really have the same wife in common.
I'm so glad
just clarifying.
Yes.
One of us is going.
When I bought the magnetic marketing system, I bought it to save whatever traditional business was failing miserably at the time, and then I figured out, wow, this dude just sold me a bunch of paper and ink and some cassettes for $400 with words on paper. I want to do that. So what I really wanted was a mail order business because I wanted to get out of the police department. But for a mail order business, you need copy. I was broke. I couldn't afford to hire a copywriter. I had to learn to do it myself. And actually, that, after 9 years of straight serial business failure, that little mail order business I started with my own copy was the first successful business I had.
First ad or sales letter you did?
Yes.
And for what? So what did this look like?
So it was a self-published bodybuilding course, which initially was just a manual in a 3-ring binder, and then it grew cassettes, bonus reports, video. Those were totally original ideas of mine. I don't know where I got those ideas.
And did you run ads? Did you do mail? What'd you do?
2-step in the magazines, call, toll-free, record a message 24 hours a day, request a free report. I sent them the sales letter. Another totally original idea of mine was if they didn't buy after the first letter, I sent them a second letter 2 weeks later. If they didn't buy after that, I sent them a third letter 2 weeks later. Totally original idea.
Mm-hmm. So
I just swiped everything I saw him doing. That's all I did, and adapted it to the bodybuilding market.
So as an aside, how'd you find Halbert?
That's your fault too.
So how many of you at least know of Gary Halbert? We should hope. Yeah. Okay. So you do understand. Talented, highly skilled, mentally not 100% with us at any one given time, right? So everybody's got a Halbert story. What's yours?
Do you want one that can be told in mixed company? You want PG?
Yeah, and one that might even have a point.
Okay, one that might have. So
I know that complicates things. But.
So we got I wound up working with Gary in Miami, and we got a gig from one of these internet marketing guru guys, and I saw the check come in, a high 5-figure check, and Halbert tells me, this is a big job. It's really important. You be here, first thing, 8 a.m. tomorrow. We're going to work till 8 p.m. At the very least, but plan on being here till midnight. It's going to be a 16-hour day. I'll be cracking the whip, yada, yada, yada. Every day I show up, knock on the door. I have to wake him up. And he'd show up in his boxer shorts and come back in 2 hours. This went on day after day. When I did come back, the whole day consisted of, let's go get coffee. Now let's get breakfast. Now let's go to the bookstore. There's a CD I want to buy. Let's go out on the boat. This kept happening day after day for weeks, and I'm freaking out because I saw the check come in, and I'm thinking, man, we got to produce something for this guy. And I didn't say anything because I thought, well, he's the master, I'm the student. This went on for at least 3 weeks, maybe 4. And finally, after 4 weeks of screwing around, and I'm really nervous at that point because we hadn't written a lick of copy, hadn't even talked about this. We're out on his boat, and he's talking about whatever it was he talked. There were very few topics he talked about. He was probably talking about sex. So he's talking about sex, and then he just stops and zones off for a minute and says, turn the boat around, and didn't say a word. And we went back and docked it. He walked up to the apartment and just got out the yellow legal pad and started writing. And in one fell swoop, wrote that whole promotion. And I thought, because it looked to me like we had been screwing off for a month. But what he was doing, he was letting everything percolate up here till he got the big idea, the flash of brilliance. Because we could have spent those 4 weeks writing some pretty decent copy, but if the big idea wasn't right, it wouldn't matter how brilliant the wordsmithing was. It would have performed mediocre.
So do you know who Alex Cohen is?
No,
So Alex owned Trim Spa, which is where he made a crap load of money. Anna Nicole Smith was a celebrity spokesperson. But before that, and running into that, Alex owned the largest 8, 10, 12 teams out doing lose weight, stop smoking, $39 seminar in the hotel. Run newspaper ad, I wrote Valpak for him. So Alex calls, gets me, and I'd done some stuff for him in the stop smoking hypnosis business. But he came to me from Halbert in the first place. And he calls and he says, so he gets me on the phone, and the first thing he says out of his mouth is, I'm going to fly down there and I'm going to shoot him. I said, I assume we're having a conversation about Halbert, right? He says, yeah. Yeah, he says he's supposed to be getting this ad done, for Trim Spa, all right? And after it being 2 weeks late, I sent my daughter down there, who's like the in-house writer. And so she was supposed to go down there and babysit him and get this thing done in a few days, right? It's been 2 weeks, right? He says every day they drive around town. They're at a coffee shop, they're at the beach, they're at a used bookstore, they're at the Salvation Army store, they're, God knows where, and they're no further to having an ad, than they were 2 weeks ago. And she can't stand it anymore, and so she's threatening to come home. I still don't have my ad, I said, I'll call them, for what it's worth, but you're going to get it whenever you get it. That's the deal. So I get him. I said, look, you're one step away from having to give this check back, because Alex is really pissed. And she's leaving, He says, yeah, I know. He said, we're on my way taking her to the airport right now. I'll talk to you later. Boom. So he literally does the ad on the hood of the car in the parking lot at the airport. That's where he finally does it, right? So Alex is livid. I mean, livid. $75,000. And this is some years ago. $75,000 was real money. So $75,000 for one ad. It's 2 weeks late. I had to send her down there to get it. And then he literally does it on butcher paper from the back of the car that a sandwich was wrapped in on the hood of the car at the airport before You know, I said, so have you run it yet? You know, he says, yeah, I've run it. I says, well, how does it do it? He says, like it's a 12-to-1 ROI. I says, what exactly, why do you care, right? What difference does it make, right? And so you're right. See, people have to get to, I mean, better work discipline than that is advisable. But, but there is a part of doing copy that requires you. Carlton talks about piling everything on tables and walking around them in a circle until something finally grabs them as a starting point. You know, finding the starting point. Mm-hmm. Different people get there different ways. You know, I mean, I've gone to the zoo. I've gone to the dollar store. I don't usually drag the client along and let them watch this process, but I mean, I've gone and walked around the dollar store and then to find the idea. You know, gone to Barnes & Noble, to the section that kind of is related to what we're doing, to find the idea. Because the idea, it's important. It's really important. So, what's the biggest ad, sales letter, client, biggest direct marketing success you've been a part of?
It was for my own business, one of my own businesses, a bodybuilding supplement company. Started out of pure financial desperation. In fact, when I think of all my biggest successes, they were always started out of pure financial desperation. Had just moved back to the States. The gig with Halbert, which was supposed to last for a year at least, abruptly ended. All my stuff from Costa Rica was stolen. New wife from Colombia, didn't even have a place to live. Had like $1,500 left on the visa, and wrote this sales letter for a supplement, for a bodybuilding supplement, and launched that with what little money I had left, and then was able to build an entire business around that. That was 2004. I sold that business in 2012, and that promo is still running today, almost word for word.
Remember the headline? You know the headline?
The headline has changed several times. I don't remember the original headline. Something about jealously guarded secret of the world's most successful bodybuilder. That wasn't it. Something like that. I don't remember the original headline.
Do you know the place it can be seen?
It's probably still up at asresearchlabs.com. It's what's the name of that? Hypergain is the name of the product. Hypergain.
So, tell me the guru story. It's in your newsletter.
The what?
This month. The guru story. Kumari.
Oh, Kumar. Oh, that guru.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great movie. Has anybody seen that movie, Kumari? Okay, so I guess I'm going to ruin the ending, right?
Okay, so spoiler alert.
You still should see the movie,
You should still
though.
see the movie.
So this guy, Vikram Gandhi, who grows up in New Jersey, decides he's going to do a documentary about religious gurus in the U.S., in India and in the U.S. And he starts the documentary that way. Then he figures out, well, I think this could be a lot more instructional if I become a guru and we film this thing. So he grows his hair out, grows his beard out, starts walking around without his shoes, with a robe. He's got some crazy-looking half-moon walking stick, and he imitates his grandmother's accent, a grandmother from India, and makes this fake name, Kumari, makes up these fake yoga movements. My favorite one was he stole Pete Townsend a windmill guitar thing and makes a yoga move about. And so this thing rapidly grows out of his control, by the way. And he starts building a following in Phoenix, Arizona. He could have built a following nationally if he wanted. He could have built his own cult. That's how effective this was. And so he gets all these people doing all his movements, saying all these various chants, these people believing in Kumari's philosophy and just following this guy. And finally it comes time where he has to reveal himself. And, all these people, all these experts are talking about, oh, he's an intuitive and psychic, and all these people are talking about how their lives were transformed and all these emotional issues they dealt with for years and spent decades in therapy, could never fix. They're fixed thanks to Kumari. This guy's, the second coming or whatever. And then he reveals that it was all a big crock of crap. He made it all up, and his real name is Vikram Gandhi. Only one person gets pissed off. All the rest of them still have to admit, okay, we understand this was one big fraud and just an experiment and a documentary, but this really helped us. And so why I wrote about it in the newsletter is because I was starting to investigate this virtual reality technology and how we create our own reality in our own heads, which is basically just pick a delusion you like and stick with it. Because you don't want to start pulling threads on some of the stuff you believe in, because it's going to quickly unravel. But the lesson I got out of Kumari is it doesn't matter. The change, the changing your reality, the benefits you experience are real, even if it is a fraud. And how this all relates to copy is it got me thinking about copy. I always view copy as persuasion, which it is. Mm-hmm. It's persuasion in print, but what we're really doing is changing somebody's reality or agreeing with their reality / delusion, whatever you want to call it. We're getting agreement with them for that so that we can create a new reality in their head. That's all we're doing with copy and word pictures and persuasion stuff.
Yeah, the second is easier than the first, the reinforcing a belief already held. Mm-hmm. Because people are so reluctant to give up on them. Houdini, there's a new show on. It's not very good. It's not awful. Houdini and Doyle, and it's theoretic. It's X-Files is really what it is. But they have taken the character of Houdini and the character of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote, "How the hell did you get over here? What are you doing over here?"
Everybody over there steal a seat, so
Okay, I meant everybody but you. So anyway, it's not so. But there was a real relationship, and between the two, Doyle and Houdini, and it was both friendly and adversarial because Doyle deeply believed in spiritualism and in the ability of psychics to talk to the dead and all of that. And Houdini did not believe any of that. And late in his career, Houdini's third act was about debunking all of this stuff. And he would do a show and demonstrate how he could duplicate all the phenomena that spiritualists and psychics and people that talk to the dead and time travelers and all that stuff, that they did to prove their thing. He would demonstrate how you could do it as a magic trick, and thereby debunking it all, except in the minds of the people who absolutely were, and so Doyle was one of them. So where Doyle went with that is Houdini, in demonstrating all this, is keeping secret the fact that he actually is a psychic and a time traveler and a spiritualist and a person who can talk to the dead. And in fact, even his magic stuff, his escapes, cannot be duplicated by other magicians because he actually dematerializes himself in one place and materializes himself in another. So even revealing how he did things could not disabuse Doyle of his deeply held belief or delusion, whichever term you want to use. And so he just created new facts to explain this in a way that supported what he believed and what he wanted to believe. And that's what most people do. And we,
Houdini was in the minority. People want to believe in mysticism, even the people who say they don't believe it.
right. So let's do specifics. If you're going to, I mean, newsletter, by the way, where can people see it? What do you want to do?
Well, I'll give them a free issue if they want.
Okay.
If anybody be interested in this, it's about getting into one of the best businesses I know, the easiest, most lowest capital intensive way with the highest chance of success way, and my underground traffic secret, which nobody knows. I learned that this weekend, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's the one thing. It's the one traffic secret you need. Nobody knows it except me and him. And so they can get a free issue at free-issue.com. And can I say this? You're going to get it in hard copy. And there are very specific reasons for that if I'm dogmatic about anything, it is this. Dogmatic, Doberman, yes, pun intended. Look up the Millward-Brown direct mail study. Millward-Brown direct mail study. Here's the reason you're going to get my newsletter in print. You cannot duplicate this digitally. Materials in print light up the sections of your brain that control spatiality, emotions, decision makings, like a Christmas tree. The exact same message delivered digitally cannot even come close to doing it. So, even today, with everything digitized, you cannot even come close to replicating the emotional impact of a message delivered in hard copy. I've tried it. I've tried replacing it in my bodybuilding business. Tried replacing that print newsletter every way to Sunday. Retention would immediately drop into the toilet. At the best, a 1-month retention on AutoShip. Deliver that newsletter as an extra benefit to my AutoShip people. Boom, retention back up to 4 months, which is double industry standard. You still, trust me on this, you still cannot replicate the power of that with any digital format, period.
Cool. Okay, so specific copy stuff. So you critique a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. You do a lot of copywriting. Like me, you see a lot of your subscriber stuff, your mastermind group people's across your desk. What's some of the worst stuff, dumbest stuff, most ineffectual stuff that people keep doing that you see most?
What I see most is selling to logic, selling to the logical brain, feature benefit selling, which, it ain't bad, better than nothing, right? But not taking the time to figure out what their market really wants, not taking the time to really understand the market, focusing on product, features, benefits, where it's all about the market. You've said glop a couple times this week. I mean, that's like...
I mean it affectionately.
Well, of course,
yeah.
We all do. It's a term of affection that us copywriters use, but there's a lot to be said about that, because the product really ain't the important thing. It's the market, and let me clarify that a little better. Markets are just groups of people, so it's actually, we're talking about people. We're talking about the person you're selling to. So I see a lot of copy that's just all feature benefits. It does this, it has this, it's blue, it has 7 handles. When you quit exercising on it after 2 days, you can hang your clothes on it. So feature benefit. Not understanding the market enough and why people are buying this. Not buying it for any of the features. They're not buying it for any of the benefits that you think they're buying it for, even the benefits they say they're buying it for. They're getting to the deeper benefits and targeting those, the unstated reasons why people want to buy stuff. Yeah, so people focusing way too much on product and just not focusing on and understanding the market.
See, that's the most important of everything you just said is even the benefits they state. So, there's a direct sales axiom that buyers are liars. And that's why focus groups are flawed, surveys are flawed, interviews with customers are flawed, is because in many, many cases, they will go to the same place that the journeyman copywriter went. They will go to product, feature, benefit, uses, the logical functionality of the thing that they bought. That's where they'll go, default to, just as most marketers will default to it. And that's how they've justified and rationalized the purchase after the fact. It's the context they think you want information about. And so all that stuff, it's not that you don't do it, but it has to be looked at with great skepticism and caution when you survey a bunch of customers about either why they did what they did or what they want in a given product or service. Because they, in most cases, they don't know. And they can't really enunciate why they have behaved in the way they have behaved. And in some cases, if they can, they find it embarrassing. And so they won't enunciate why they have behaved in the way they have behaved, right? So if you take that split test on that headline I showed you of, I can't do it verbatim now, but you're going to lose X number of pounds, or you're going to lose more weight than any of your friends do in the next 90 days. And the second headline vastly outperforms the first for obvious reasons, because of positional status. Even if Barbara wants to lose weight, she really likes the idea of losing more weight than Cindy and Susie, particularly Susie, because Susie always has a better car and a better dress and a better husband and a better boyfriend and and this is finally an opportunity to do. And she's not going to enunciate that back to you in like an interview or in a focus group unless it's very skillfully conducted. She's never going to tell it to you ahead of time on a survey because it really hadn't occurred to her as why she would want to lose weight. So the truth, in other words, of why we do what we do and why we buy what we buy and why we want to own what we own and why we respond to one sales message or another is very hard to get at on a conscious, intellectual, conversational basis. And so I'm always, and so back to your digital thing, just as an example. Most audiences today who are newsletter subscribers, who are book buyers, who are whatever, large segments of that audience will tell you they want or would prefer digital. And then their behavior after the fact will be the exact opposite of that. And of course, but see, they can't even describe to you how different parts of their brains are triggered by the act of opening a package versus the act of opening an email, because they don't know that's happening to them. So they can't tell us that it is happening, right? And that's a dangerous flaw. A lot of people will overweight gathered input from their own customers and hurt themselves a lot by doing so. What's the smartest thing you see people doing? Who's the smartest pencil in your box? Maybe not by name, but by description and what they're doing with their marketing. So you got how many in?
So,
in Knights of the, whatever, your round table?
so the smartest thing I see people doing. Well, so here's a very, very practical thing that the smartest guys in my Camelot do, which I'm surprised more people don't do this. I used to tell people to write at the 6th grade level, and that's still a good goal. Because if you write at the 6th grade level, well, first of all, that's the average, that's the reading level of the average American. So the guy who's got a PhD can understand it, and then a guy like me who barely graduated from Barberton High School can understand it. And so I've been telling people that a lot, and then I discovered something else. The closer I got to the 4th grade reading level, the higher my response went. And Hemingway, when you evaluate his stuff, Hemingway wrote at the 4th grade reading level for all intents and purposes. So, the best copy I'm seeing now for my Knights is 6th grade reading level or below. Watching the adverbs, not overusing the adverbs, using power verbs, and Hemingway app. I think it's just HemingwayApp.com will make you a lot of money if you run your copy through it. It'll show you at what reading level you are. It'll show which sentences are hard to understand, which are really hard to understand. And I have to fight people on this, especially some of the health guys, because they want to start. They have all these great studies that they want to put in there, and the Harvard this, Harvard that. And the closer we can get them to the 4th or 6th grade reading level, the more money they make.
So I used to have a Hemingway app, which I used a lot, and she grew up. But when Jennifer was 8, 9, 10, I would have her read my copy aloud and watch what she stumbled over, what she had difficulty with, what she would ask about. I just read it, but I don't know what it means. And I would go back and rewrite it all until she could do a smooth read with no hiccups and high comprehension of what she was reading.
Your Hemingway app was way more expensive than mine.
Yes. you ain't shitting. And it's now long ago stopped being functional, but somehow the expense hasn't stopped. I don't exactly know.
Figure.
I don't know why that is, but so we were just talking about with Capuzzi and Jeff before we started. That's exactly right. We will always tend to overestimate the intelligence, the sophistication, all of that of our audience, because it's flattering to us, right? Everybody else is an idiot, but not my people. And so when you give them more credit, you automatically give credit to yourself. Plus, it seems to make sense, right? Well, my people are 80% college educated, so you should deal with them on a different level than my Investors Business Daily readers are different than Trailer Park Monthly readers. We should deal with them on a different level, and it's almost always wrong. It's almost always wrong.
I had that reinforced again. Sometimes I have to keep relearning these same lessons, but had it reinforced recently, just about 2 years ago. I wrote a newspaper space ad. Yes, people still buy from ads in newspapers much more than you probably think they do.
Jeff Hawkins, is Jeff still here? Or did Jeff stay for the first 2 days? So Dr. Hawkins, the whole diabetes, it's all based on, that whole business has been driven by full-page newspaper ads.
Has it really?
That puts people in seminars, free seminars, and then drives them to an individual appointment to sell an $8,000 diabetes box. And I just redid the newspaper ad and tweaked it a little bit. But yeah, some of this old media, by the way, if you can use it, its cost has gone down because people are abandoning it, right? And so in many cases, there's bargain opportunities in this stuff. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah,
So your
big bargain
newspaper ad.
opportunities. So I wrote an ad for a pain supplement, and whatever it came in at, like, because I was citing these studies and using all these fancy ingredients. Came in at like the 8th grade reading level. And the MER, they measure the efficiency. They had an media efficiency ratio. It's just your return on ad spend. So a 1.0 MER is a $1,000 ad spend brings in $1,000. The MER came in at like 0.96. Not bad.
You live with that if there's a back end. Right? Yeah.
Can live with that. But I did something that I hadn't done in a really long time, since the 90s. I started listening to the calls and hearing how these people speak, hearing their word choices, and getting a mental picture of who this was reading this ad. Went back and redid it. Got as close to the 4th grade reading level as I can. Boom, 3.0 MER. Just getting the reading level down for Mom, Pa Kettle in Barberton, Ohio in the trailer park.
Yeah, and you know, the longer you do what you do, the further away you get from the customer or from the beginner, right? And you begin to think, well, everybody knows that, right? But no, the new person doesn't know any more than the new person knew a decade ago. The new person is the new person. The frightened person, to our conversation, they're just as frightened because they're coming into that office for the first time. That's new to them, right? And the more we do it, the longer you're in practice, the more distanced we get from the sense of where they're at. And you know, yesterday one of the things on the list was mirroring. See, what you're describing is actually mirroring now the customer in the tone, the style, the level of sophistication, the syntax, all of it. And most people don't take the trouble, you know, to do it at all. I had this conversation with Gunny Renker. We had just enough time to run out and get a bite to eat. And normally, lunch is a big to-do. You know, we go to the country club or we go to Marriott and sit by the pool. And, you know, we didn't have time. And we're driving from one place to the other, and here's a drugstore, and they got a lunch counter. You know, it's old Rexall drugstore. They got a sign, you know, sodas. And I said, let's just run in there. We'll get a egg salad sandwich, and we'll have a milkshake, and we'll be on our way, right? Sit at the counter. He says, I don't know what this is. I said, it's a lunch counter. It's in the back of a drugstore. You sit on a stool. You eat something. They got pie in a case. He said, I've never seen one of those. I said, when's the last time you were in a Walmart? He said, I haven't been in a Walmart. I said, I don't know if I've ever been in a Walmart. I said, that's where your customers are, Bubba. Go down there on a Saturday and hang out. You know, pack a lunch, take a beverage, spend a few hours at a Walmart store. You know, get a look at them, overhear them, listen to them. You know, and a lot of people, they get so distanced from their own customer. You know, they don't. They do not do that.
That's great advice. You get thousands of dollars of market research just sitting at that bench at the Walmart pharmacy and listening to the people picking up their meds.
And the calls, see, you're right. If you're doing direct response and those calls are being taken by a call center. When I wrote copy for Weight Watchers, the first thing I did is I spent a day in the call center. It's exactly what I did. Jacked into the calls so I could hear the calls. Of course, the first thing I identified was the call center was a mess, right? But the second thing is you got a real, you know, I got a feel I would never get for mostly women, some guys, but mostly women. Almost all the guys who call in to Weight Watchers are gay, by the way, just for the record. So the male weight loss business nobody ever makes it work. Nutrisystem is losing their ass now. The retention rate is like nothing, right? As soon as they get the box of food and that 2 cheeseburgers and a piece of pizza and a pie that they showed in the TV commercial is actually 5 days of food, not 1 day of food. And the portion size is this, the guys are out, right? So the male weight business is not a good business. See, the bodybuilding supplement's a different deal altogether, but weight's horrible. But, you listen to those calls and then you looked at their advertising and you thought, I can't even believe they're getting the phone to ring, because there's no connectivity here between these people and what they're saying in their advertising. It happens all the time.
Absolutely. Did you feel like, did you have a better empathy for the people you're writing for after you heard those calls?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm not a big empathy guy, but
I find that hard to believe, Dan.
you know, I have a lot of great attributes, and that's relatively low on the list of great attributes. But I had a better sense of where they were, right? Because they were actually forcing a conversation beyond the script. You know, they really wanted to talk to somebody about their history, how many times they've tried to lose weight, and, you know, and they wanted to have a conversation about why they wanted to lose weight. And the whole script was not set up for that, you know. And in call centers, so here's the interesting thing about call centers. So that is another place that there's forced brevity. So direct marketing companies that pay to use call centers, for the most part, they're paying by the minute. So if you go hire an inbound call center to take your orders, they're going to charge you often by the minute. So now what everybody wants to do is have the call happen in the shortest number of minutes possible, even with an inbound center. So Weight Watchers was fielding 5 million calls a year. And they wanted to do that with as few human beings as they could possibly do it with per shift, thereby speed of call, right? And so they're monitoring that, firing people who are taking too long, giving rewards at the end of the week to people who had the shortest average time on the call, et cetera, right? So it's all about efficiency instead of effectiveness, right? There's a credit card commercial, I think it's Discover, a series of credit card commercials where the person calls in because they were late on their payment or something, and the person on the other end of the phone in the Discover Center is like a clone of them, and they're having a conversation with a clone of them, right? Well, that's what people really want, right? I mean, they want affinity, they want, you know, they at least want empathy. And if you can fake it, that's okay, right? So they're like, all the pressure is to do these calls in the shortest period of time possible. But the real issue is how many people who call in and get information about a meeting show up at the meeting. That's like the first issue, right? And forcing unwanted data monitoring, the longer calls, higher show-up rate. Gee, what a surprise, right? And so this script was all about moving Martha as quickly as possible to, here's 2 locations, there's a Tuesday night and a Thursday afternoon, which one do you want to go to? Well, how about if we let Martha tell her story a little, right? We don't really have to change what you say. We just got to allow 3 minutes for Martha to tell her damn story about why she's trying to lose weight, and say, that's a really good reason to want to lose weight, Martha. Now let me tell you where the 2 meetings are, you know, and it makes a difference. So, so when you critique so people have asked about the copywriting process. I'm not. I'm going to ask about your either self-critique or critique of others. How do you approach looking at somebody's copy and determining good, bad, ugly, and being helpful?
The first thing I look at is, you know, we used to say you got about 8 seconds to get somebody's attention. I think that's changed, and I blame the internet and smartphones. It's probably, you know, maybe a couple seconds at the most. So if you can't grab attention immediately, what sense does it make for anybody to read the rest of your copy? I don't care if you resurrected, you know, Gene Schwartz and Gary Halbert, and they wrote the rest of the body copy. Nobody's going to read it. So, I mean, that's numero uno for me, is does this stop me dead in my tracks and make me want to read on? And it's harder to do that than ever, in my most humble but accurate opinion these days. So that's number one. And actually, I could just repeat that for the rest
There's
of
a
the
test
copy
for that.
critique.
It's not a new test. There's a test for this. So here's a take home, if you don't already have it. The test is you take no more than the top 1/3 of the real estate of your ad or your letter or your website or your whatever, down to maybe just the headline, but you give yourself no more than the top third of the real estate. Make that the ad from which you attach the call to action. So that's all you got, is the headline or the pre-head, the headline, and the subhead. And now call 1-800-WHATSUS or go to www.whatsus. And if you ran that ad in the newspaper or in a magazine that your audience reads, would people respond to just that? And if they won't, you're in trouble, because the way they won't respond to it is, in actual life, is they won't go any further than it. So to your point, all of the rest of the brilliance is largely wasted, right? So that's a test. It's an old test, but it is still, it's probably more relevant today, to your point, than it has ever been. What else you look at?
The big idea. And in certain
It's
markets,
often wrong, isn't it?
often wrong, especially in health and financial. I mean, these are markets that have heard and seen it all. So your big idea better be pretty damn big and pretty unique. You know, when everybody was talking about, you know, here's how to get a 10-banger with this brand new tech company. You know, here's how to, you know, MIT graduates' amazing new system for doubling the value of your portfolio and yada, yada, number of weeks, months, whatever. All of a sudden, Stansberry says, the end of America. And, you know, just does the opposite. It talks about how, you know, we're going to have this big disaster. The biker zombie apocalypse is coming, and this is why you're going to, you know, you're going to lose all your money and stuff like that. It was, at the time, I mean, you know, now everybody's ripped it off. So that market is blind to that kind of stuff almost. But at the time, that was a unique idea, different than what everybody else is saying. So if you're saying the same thing as everybody else, well, why should I read the rest of your piece? I've seen it a million times before. Or worse, I bought this before and it didn't work. So big idea is one of the first things I look at.
I find, I'll bet you'll agree, when I get stuff I have to critique, they often have a workable, a viable big idea, and they have buried it.
It's always buried.
It's
not
there,
the one
but
they
it's
think.
buried.
Yeah. And you know, I'm just being honest. I mean, for a lot of the copy I wrote in the bodybuilding market, it was pretty half-assed. It was cranked, again, here we go back to this financial desperation thing. It was cranked out under duress due to financial desperation, so it needed to be produced really fast. But I nailed the big idea. And nailing the big idea that made everybody in that market go, say, what? With half-assed copy, worked incredibly well. Now, that's not an excuse to write half-assed copy. Don't go say
No, but it should be encouraging to some who must do a large part of yourself, is because you're 1,000% right. If a few things are right, the sort of A level, B level, C level of all of the copy matters a lot less if you nail a few things properly, right? I mean, if you really understand who you're writing to, for example, if you really understand them and you nail this big idea and you get a compelling proposition, you get like the offer really good. A lot of the other stuff can get A-level results and it be C-level stuff if we objectively analyze it as professors of copy. You know, the other stuff, good enough is good enough if you get a few things really right. Okay, so he and I are going to do something. We can do maybe 3 questions. So if 3 people have questions they want to play with Dan, more than me, come up to the table. In the meantime, he and I are going to do something maybe. So when we finished, we'll take a break. This is a yes or no, now or never. But he's agreed to work if you want him to work. So he and I are going to do 2 days with a maximum of 12 people. And we are going to workshop your stuff, which means we will embarrass you in front of 11 other people. But we're going to workshop your stuff together. So it will be a live, hot seat style, copy critique clinic. And we're going to collect a pile of your stuff in advance, and we are going to both go over it. And then, without a net in front of everybody else, we are going to do copy workshop with your copy. Right? I got to know if we got 12 or not, like now. So when we take a break, there's a form. Vicky's got it out there. If it interests you, Vicky is passing them out. Good. So if it interests you, there's a max of 12. There's a minimum of 10. We're only doing it if there's at least 10. And we need to know now, not later. Okay? Now, we have questions.
Absolutely. So you mentioned a topic that's actually close to my heart, the idea that the attention span went from 8 seconds to 3 seconds online, which is absolutely true. I'm curious as to, if you do online marketing, for example, like Facebook or YouTube, what have you, what tends to happen is because there's so many bad marketers out there, they're just writing whatever, and then Facebook just gets harder and harder, or YouTube, to buy marketing space because it's harder for copy. So I'm curious, when you're writing copy and you have this quote-unquote amazing ad and you submit it and it gets denied, what's your thought process for other strategies to write different versions or what have you? Like how do you plan it out? So the one that sticks, so to speak.
Right. First, Dan, this internet thing he's referring to is a worldwide computer network.
I'm aware. It's got tubes.
Totally transformed the way we look at porn.
I know. It's a remarkable thing. Yeah,
yes.
I know. Thank you very much.
So, so that's an issue, especially when a lot of advertisers are using clickbait-y stuff.
Your
like,
mic's too far away from your.
Oh.
When you turn your head, we aren't getting you.
Okay.
So
Let me put on
show
the
less of your chest. And,
So now you have that to deal with. Right. People using clickbait that has no connection whatsoever to their offer, or some sort of image that has no connection to their offer. So, what it comes down to is, again, totally understanding your market. And was it Collier or Hopkins who said that entering the conversation? It was Collier. And entering the conversation in their head. Yeah, you're competing with that clickbaity type of stuff, which gets clicks, but then that just totally destroys trust, when somebody clicks over to the offer. So Facebook specifically, has a lot to do with the image. And what did you ask about getting some stuff getting not approved? What was that part?
Well, what happens is that sometimes you submit an ad in Facebook, YouTube, or any marketing agency. Let's say you want to send it out to 50,000 people immediately, kind of like copy when you mail. And those agencies, because of all the other bad marketers that have done whatever copy before, then they just create these crazy policies. You cannot use this word, not that word. You can use this image, that image. And so I'm just curious as to how do you battle that out?
Okay, so you may not want to hear this. Now, I don't know what market you're in, but is Facebook efficient for you, or is it effective?
Effective.
Okay. Because you know, in certain markets, the quality of customer you're getting from Facebook is significantly less in terms of lifetime customer value than you could get in other media. In other media, you don't have that issue to deal with. I'm probably the most ambitiously lazy guy you can meet. I don't want to challenge. I have enough challenges. I've decided to learn jazz guitar improvisation. That in life are enough challenges for me. In business, I don't want to challenge. I just want to get from point A to point B, this being the money. And media plays a big part in that. So if there's a low-hanging fruit way to get it, and I know this is not the answer you want, I'm going for the low-hanging fruit way, which in most cases for me is not Facebook. What market are you in?
And look, I'll just piggyback something else you won't want to hear. However effective and profitable it is, depending on it is very dangerous.
Extremely.
Because the problem that you just described is only going to get worse. They want brand advertisers who don't count, who don't do math. That's what they want. And they are increasingly getting them. And as soon as they have enough of them, they will make it harder and harder and harder for direct response people to be there at all. And that's really the history of media. So relying on it and not building out your plan B, just solving the problem of plan A, is a really bad business strategy. I mean, it's really bad. Okay, who was next?
Thanks for everything so far. You alluded earlier on that we all worrying far too much about the features and the benefits. So how do you establish what the real market drivers are in your business? And are there 3 tips to finding out what those market drivers truly are? And are there any resources that we can use to help us establish that?
A couple good resources are a good old Amazon, getting on there and reading customer testimonials for a similar product. I'll be honest with you, that's not my first preference. That's not my first go-to thing. I'm old school. I would really prefer to get face-to-face, belly-to-belly with the market. Again, you know what? I think it's probably somewhat of a misnomer to talk about markets. We're talking about people. And the closer you can get to understanding what the people want, and the closer you can get to understanding your avatar, the better. If the best way to do that is face-to-face, belly-to-belly with somebody who buys what it is you sell. If that means hanging out at Walmart and talking to those people. If you can do that, you're going to get a much more visceral impact and probably a much better understanding of their thought process. And you'll probably get a better understanding of the unspoken things that they really want, the real emotional needs that they're trying to satisfy that way. So, you know, an okay substitute for that would be finding where those people congregate online and read what they're writing if there's a discussion forum or Amazon testimonials.
See, there's a ton of market research that can be useful, paid research, and there's a couple of companies. I mean, if you Google market research and you work backwards, there's companies, for example, that compile the annual thing about the woman consumer and the annual thing about the senior consumer. And it's like this thick. And it's all these studies that have been done. I bought it all when I did the Marketing to the Affluent book, for example. And Guthrie Renker buys the women's stuff every year, so I see it. Okay? And it's not that there's not gems in there, but it's data, right? So it is largely statistical, demographic, psychographic. It's like polling in politics, right? So 22,000 people have been surveyed, and 42% of them rank this as their number one concern, and 36% of them rank this as their number one concern. If you get 5 of them drunk and have the same conversation with them, you'll have a totally different sense of who the hell they are. then, you know, it's like I say at GKIC events all the time, Miltier complained that people thought she had some kind of urinary tract infection or something because I'm constantly pushing her into the women's room. Go in there, hang out for a little while, come back and tell me what they're all saying, right? because the truth will come out in a ladies' room. That's where the truth will come out. So nothing really beats whoever it is you are going to sell to, getting in amongst them and engaging in and listening to conversations and observing behavior. In a sense, the market research is like watching animals in a zoo versus watching them in the wild in their natural habitat, left to their own devices. And it's not that watching them in the zoo is not useful, but it only gives us about half the picture. Last.
Hi, Dan. Richard Dougal. Knowing human behavior, Dan, how are you able to keep such a high retention rate in your membership site among your nights?
Ooh, that's a course within itself. So most people who have, again, we're going to talk about print. Most people who have membership sites that are $30 a month or more, you check with any of them, average retention 2 months. They can get 3 months, they are thrilled. Now, damaging admission, I have not checked my retention stats so far for this year. When I checked last year, it was an average of 18 months at a $98 a month price point. Now, there are very specific reasons why. This was a carefully and meticulously engineered process, which the best way to see is to join my Nights in the Market in Camelot and see what happens. You knew I had to get a sales pitch in there somehow, right?
It's fine.
But a big part of that retention is the print newsletter. Again, I'm going to repeat myself, it cannot, the emotional impact, the footprint in the human brain from that being delivered in print cannot be replicated any other way with digital delivery. Any other way. I will stop doing it when it stops getting spectacular results like this. But I don't think we're going to see that for a very long time. That's a big part of it, Richard.
See, there's a reason it's called virtual, right? So think of the difference between emailing a picture of flowers to your significant other or coming home with flowers. The whole dynamic is different, right? And yet that's, the minute that works, I'm all in, okay? And so neither he nor I, and people really believe it about me and they're wrong, I am agnostic on this entire topic. So like the minute we don't have to send out DVDs and we could just tell people to go online and watch the DVD, the minute I see Sleep Number Beds do it, I'm all in. I'd love for all my clients to be able to do it. That's more money they can give me. If they got to send out 100,000 DVDs this year and I can eliminate that, I can make more money. Right? So I'm agnostic on all this. I am not ideological. I am not Obama, where, you know, he will freely admit that if we triple capital gains taxes, it's going to have a negative effect on the economy, but I want to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. That ain't me. Right? I'm a pragmatist, as is he. So we would eliminate print tomorrow without an ounce of remorse. I would cheaply produce my VSLs with a camera head mounted with a smartphone duct taped to a pole, if I could get away with it. I just charge more now to write the damn thing. As it is, when I make him spend, $100 to produce the videos, I'm limited in how much I can charge. So I'm agnostic on this, and he is agnostic on this. But again, think about it. Email her flowers or bring flowers home. If you come home from a trip and you have a kid, okay, bring them a toy or email them a picture of a toy. Bring them a toy or email them a game. See which, what reaction, right? That all of the emotional embedded dynamics are different. And when you specifically talk about retention and membership sites, see, even in consumer products, glop, where the product even gets delivered every month or every other month, their retention rate will go up if they also deliver the extra goodies in hard version. And some are willing to do that, and some aren't willing to do that.
And even better, if the glop is delivered on one day, every month,
Boom,
the
you got
extra
it.
goodies delivered on another day.
You got it. So Bill and I, GKIC, when we split the delivery to 2 envelopes a month, right? You get your regular newsletter with some stuff in it at one time a month, and you get gold and diamond if you're diamond, and affluent at another time a month, right? Well, it doesn't double the cost, but it increases the cost maybe by half, right? It increases retention by a whole lot more, right? I mean, now I don't have current data, but I got data consistently year over year over year for 5 years. I mean, I can tell you for sure. So you're absolutely right. I mean, if you'll deliver stuff 2 or 3, because again, if you're dating and you only show up once a month, particularly if you only show up to sell something. So if you only show up once a month and it's, a midnight booty call, versus showing up a lot and sometimes bringing flowers and watching a chick flick on the couch, right? That's a different relationship. And these are, see, to his point, a market is a bunch of people. That's what it is, right? And even a B2B market is really a bunch of people. Somebody's saying yes or no, even in a Fortune 500 company. It's a human. It's a person. And so what works in personal relationships works, in this. All right, we are taking a quick 10-minute break to allow those of you that are going to do business, and then we will get back to work. And we are in the home stretch. Dan, thank you very much.